Welcome to day 25 of our journey, and we are thinking about swords today. So the swords, as I've spoken about before, are quite challenging. So I wanted to share with you some of my own reflections on the swords. I have written about the swords and lived with the swords and dealt with the swords over many years. So the first time I guess I wrote about them was in Dirty and Divine, and then again in the Book of Tarot. And I've created decks with swords in them, so the Cosmic Mother Tarot, and then more recently Rebel Heart Tarot, which is not out till later this year. However, I think each time I've visited the swords quite differently and at different times in my life, so they've brought me different things. When I talk about the swords in Dirty and Divine, which I'm going to read to you in a minute, I talk about them in quite a dark way, and I think the reason for that is because I was in a dark place at the time and I hadn't yet wielded the power of the swords to make change in my life. When I wrote about them in the Book of Tarot, they're perhaps more enlightened because I was beginning to understand them. I was beginning to get to know my own personal truth. And actually, when I created them with Nikki Cotton, hi Nikki, she's in the group, so everybody say hi to Nikki. We dealt with the swords first, and I think we wanted to get them out of the way. So the swords was the first suit that we created with the art and the kind of back and forth between us. And it was hard. It was sitting in that sword energy was really, really tough. But at the same time, I think it sliced through a lot of our own crap, a lot of our fears, and allowed us to be more liberated and free within our creation, and then bring that liberation into the other suits. So if we think about that as a metaphor for life, the swords come in and they slice through your crap and allow for space to grow. So let's just explore across these two books the ways in which I have described the swords before. So in Dirty and Divine, I actually dealt with the swords last. So in this book, if you're familiar, I go through each and every single tarot card and lived with them all for a day. And by golly, that was nuts and empowering and at times incredibly challenging. So here is the swords as I wrote it at that time last, after all the other suits. So I left the swords to last because of all the suits, they are the one I least get. They remind me of maths. I never liked maths. I don't know why they remind me of maths. Hard lines and unforgiving edges, perhaps. Let us speak no longer of numbers and equations. The swords are a suit that make me nervous. Flick through the images on your pack and you will see why. They are not pretty. They speak of disaster. Though of course nothing is truly a disaster. It all twists into something beautiful eventually. The swords are also strongly masculine. The sword is a weapon used by warriors and soldiers. It is an item whose purpose is to bring death or perhaps serious injury and disability. It is made to create success at the very real expense of someone else. Its noble purpose to protect, to defend, is tainted by the fact that any defence comes to via the blood loss of others. I'm wishing I'd done this suit first, got it out of the way, but I didn't, so this is perfect. Let us pound out this last suit with high expectation. The swords will slice through our old dead and hazy to bring the final taste of clarity on this dirty and divine journey. The end is nigh, let us be grittily enlightened. So I'm loving this. Just reading this back just the idea that to protect and to defend is at the loss of other people or, other people's expectations, which obviously I think at this point in time when I was reading this was something that I found frightening. These days, perhaps, I'm in my 40s now, a lot has changed. I've been on a big healing and recovery path. I actually think there should be no fear based around other people's losses. If we're not harming people, if we're not purposefully going out to hurt other people, then actually wielding a sword to protect ourselves and to make space for ourselves is one of the most beautiful and self-love acts that we can do. But obviously my experiences, my maturity, my growth has changed since writing this. So where was I at? Where did this journey evolve to? And this is why I'm showing you this, because as you sit with the cards over years, your experiences of them will evolve. So the swords are intense to say the least. They plunge through the depths of our minds and our mental health, and they reflect back to us some of our deepest fears and areas of confusion. Within these fearsome cards, we have a recipe for true self-understanding. There are 1,000 ideas trying to climb up past our doubt and rise to the surface. The swords, to me, tell a story. They start with the ace and bold truth, which becomes muddied with overthinking and anxiety. They live through difficulty and trauma, and in the end, when we reach the 10 of Swords, all of that overthinking and drama reaches a breaking point, and here we find great enlightenment. So no, the swords are not much fun, but they are powerful, and I'm afraid unavoidable. When they come up in a reading, you must consider the path you are on and the ways in which you are causing yourself pain. The swords ask for real change, and when you make that change, there are huge awakenings on the other side. So, some incredible, change, I think, between how I experienced the swords the first time I worked through them, to a more recent time that I worked through them. And actually probably as I moved into like Rebel Heart Tarot, then they changed yet again. And I think my tarot journey is allowing me and has allowed me to understand each and every card, not as something to be afraid of, not as something to back away from, not as something that's come to cause me harm, but something that is always come to cause me power, to help me and help my clients and help you whittle away all the self-doubt, the self-imposed limitations, the boundaries and expectations of other people, and to carve out our lives. So whether we're doing that through the cups, the swords, the wands, or a mix of all of those things, then I think we are gifted a recipe each and every time we use the cards that allows us to grow. So what's your card for today? I would love you to pull yourself a card that is just any card from the deck, and then again another card that is just a sword. So you'll need to separate all of your sword cards out and to sit with those two cards in comparison, and maybe have a little think about, when we look at the sword card, what are you cutting away, what are you changing, what are you transforming, transmuting, evolving into, and what does the other card that you happen to pull reflect further for you with that, and see how those two cards kind of balance each other out or support one another, or give even contradictory understandings that maybe help you understand your own inner contradictions and the things that are at odds or at war with one another. So thank you for listening to these swords cards, and I know that the swords are deeply challenging. Perhaps in the comments tell me what you find difficult about the swords, how they have challenged you, how you have struggled with them, and maybe how you're beginning to understand them as a tool that you can use to hugely empower your life and cut away some of the crap that's been sat there for far too long. Okay, so we'll be back again tomorrow with the next suit. Bye.